My presentation the title is Bridges Between Academic Translators Training and LSPs. What we are talking about is we have a sort of, as I said before, a dichotomy and an alleged dichotomy, because we all know that it was a sort of two spheres, two different worlds we were talking about. And some of our colleagues in former times got the feeling that the goals of a research-based academic training in translation couldn't be combined with the service languages, the language service providers' requirements. And luckily, I would say within the last 10-15 years, we are able to overcome this dichotomy and to cooperate, and without losing neither the scientific approach nor the practical one, which is very important to us. So, if we start from our starting point is that we consider translation a purposeful and professional activity, just within the traditions of Vermeer or Mentari or Nord, I think you all know, and all those scientific approaches. And within the EMT board, we had to define the competencies, and Daniel Guadec was one of the first one who really cooperated with the DGT and with the EMT, defining the so-called former wheel of competences. And all our future work was based on Daniel Guadec's theories and preparatory work. Obviously, we have to consider translation a modelizable process, because if we don't have any models, we can't neither teach them nor implement them, and that's what we need. But we all know that translation is a multifaceted professional field. That means that if in former times we had translators on one side and interpreters on the other side, this two very defined and mainly narrow professional views can't be kept anymore nowadays, and we have to change our perspective on our profession. And that's one of the, let's say, hardest job for the academic world, because the academic world should be always in advance on any development, and that's what we really have sometimes even to imagine what will happen in order to prepare our degree holders to future developments. Translation didactics, in the traditional way, was based on historical aspects, language analysis, text linguistics, and some contrastive linguistics. But it was, let's say, from the language point of view, in former times, when we studied, let's say, it was something very linguistic, and it was very close to philological studies. Obviously, we had to change our approach, because our, let's say, didactical responsibility, and that's finally program designing what we are doing, is obviously to aim to excellence. That's what we do within excellent networks like the EMT, but also in other networks like PACTE or some other networks. We have, as Claudia said, keep in mind the visibility and the image of our profession in the social community. So we have to focus on translation graduates and their role in society. We have to enhance their visibility by quality, but also making people more sensitive about what we are doing, and that's really a profession and not a hobby or something that anybody who may talk a language will be able to do. And we have to empower graduates. Employability, you know that the European Community has one of the big programs, 2020, and the further ones is employability. So we really need to be aware of this responsibility as academic world. And we have to keep this in mind, always all behind our, let's say, didactical approaches. Modern research-based academic translators training could be process-oriented, which is more the psycholinguistic and the neurological approach. There we come close to artificial intelligence, to neurolinguistics and issues like that. Or product-oriented, and there we were talking, and this is a bit more traditional, discourse analysis and corpus methodology. So the two aspects have to be always implemented in our training. There have been different projects about training, employability, research, because you need to have first an overlook, a survey of what is happening in the outer world, so-called outer world for us being academics. And one was the Optimale project. I think we will provide the presentations, and if you're really interested in, you have got the links there embedded, so you may click on the links and find the whole project description. Optimale was a project that it was an Erasmus Plus project, so a new project, and it ended in 2011, and it was one of the first big projects where we defined the needs of the LSPs, but although which competencies and which aspects the degree holders consider being important for the future professional life. So we really were able to us for the first time to combine the profession, the academic, and the degree holders, because they are always in between the academic world and the professional world. So then in 2016 we made an ENT survey asking about we asked all ENT universities, it's about the 60 universities, the degree holders of those universities via the universities itself. We asked them to tell us which competencies they thought they needed when they entered the professional world. But we also asked the LSPs which competencies they were missing. And we made a big survey which finally became the base of the new competence framework. Our response rate was, to us, a good response rate, because we got about more than 1,400 and less than 50, I think, responses. And it was, you could tick the boxes, but there were also open questions. So we had really to do a good job in evaluating this survey. But we got a nice and comprehensive, hope so, overlook of all the situation. So this is our EMT logo, we are proud of it. And now the most actual one is e-transfer, and you will be talking tomorrow about e-transfer more in detail, but the main purpose is, again, fit for market is the keyword like employability, and it's also the combination between didactical work and market needs. So you have got the e-transfer logo. Just to know which competences are requested by the LSPs, this was the Optimale rating. You see, we thought about different issues that could be important, the experience or the university degree, because some of our colleagues were telling us that the university degree may not be so important for future profession. I think it's associations know about this problem or this question. This is one of the big questions. And if you see that, for example, 18% consider it not so important having a university degree, you ask yourself, what are we doing in academia? We need to just make clear that the university degree is one of the bases of a good job in this sphere. the so-called domain knowledge, experience in other fields, which brings us to the, let's say, to the concurrence by specialists in different fields knowing languages. Because we have to be aware of the fact that specialists, let's say engineers or whatever, or doctors or whatever, knowing perfectly English or some other languages may become a concurrence for interpreters and translators not being so experienced in the field. Good knowledge of the profession and of ethics and professional standards. And what we also had to check, and this is the pie chart taken from the MT survey about the job profiles, because we were asking ourselves, where do our degree holders end up? And there we saw that, luckily, because sometimes you get the impression that our degree holders don't end up being translators. It's not a very high percentage, but it's 35% end up being translators. Proofreading, project managers, revisers, some others, language trainer, consultant, and so on. So you see that this pie chart makes clear that the profession as translator is still important. But the whole panorama is changing. This is what the degree holders thought, it's the MT survey, it's 2016, thought being important or useful in their current job. And this was important to us to define the importance or the differences between so-called A, B and C languages. Because there are two trends. There's the trend to translate only towards into the A language, but almost for economic reasons sometimes. Also the trend to translate from A to B, from B to A, from C to A, and different directions, which can be a chance but a danger at the same time. General translation, specialized translation, general knowledge, so you see this is almost important. Funny enough, the CAP tools proficiency, but this was in 2016. And we have realized is important, but not as important as that. And we are realizing every year an increase of the importance of CAP tools. We can't ignore it anymore, and we shouldn't, anyhow. So, this was really a very brief extract of all what we find out during the projects and so on. And on those bases, with different institutions, projects and so on, tried to have models, competence-based models. One is PACTE. Again, if you're interested in, no, it's not here, but again, if you're interested in, you may click on PACTE and you get the basic information about PACTE, which is a project more based on the European Competence Framework on, A level, B level, C level, C1, C2 and so on. And it's defining which competences may be taught within those levels, ending up with the academic level. And it's a Spanish-centered, it was a Spanish-centered project, but the importance of PACTE is a very big importance for our discipline, and we know exactly that PACTE is one of the bases of competence-based models. What we have done is then again within the EMT, we have got a new Competence Framework 2017, which is not the wheel of competences, but what we did a sort of cogwheel system, because we were thinking that none of the competences may exist without the other one, which is very important to us. And the 2017 Competence Framework was the base also for the EMT application. Schauen wir mal. Exactly. Just to show you, it's the competence framework where we had 5 core competence groups: language and culture, translation, technology, personal and interpersonal, and service provision. And this competence framework seems to be accepted within the community also. If you're interested, you may click on it and you find the whole document in it. So, oops. No, this is just the Spanish. So, where did mine end up? Funny enough. Huh? Okay. We start again. It's not so. It's easy doing. It's not the professional way to do. I know. Okay. And the CUT, which you may know, also has a focus on translation competences, and this is, let's say, those are the criteria on which an admission to the CUT network is based on, which also is a valuable framework. What we have to take into consideration was also the employer's perspective and international standards. There obviously we have all the standards, the ISO that everybody knows about, the terminology, the quality standards for the translation services, which is more a quality standard for the processing of translation, and the terminology. And but what we also had from the employer's perspective was the UTC. The UTC, we are collaborating a lot with the European Association of Translation Companies. They are doing a survey every year within members, and it's conducted jointly with the LIA, the European Language Industry Association, with FIT, Europe, and with GALA, and with the Lindweb. And to me, this UTC survey has got the advantage to be more internationalized. It's not only Europe-focused, which could be interesting if we take into account that we have a sort of concurrence within the whole world. We need to globalize our approach in translation too. If you're interested in, again, the link is there. There, the UTC required skill, this is the survey 2018, so it's the most recent one about this issue. The required skills, there you see that one of the language service providers' concerns is the native language, which has also to be integrated or taken into consideration within the program designing. Obviously the foreign language skill, translation competence, general knowledge, and then the translation technology skill, funny enough, is increasing compared, if you remember how it was before in 2016, it's increasing. So that means, or could mean, that the programs are adapting to this technological development, and that degree holders nowadays are much more skilled in technology than they have been even 2 or 5 years ago, which is an important aspect to us. Pressure factors, because we all know that our profession is an economic profession finally. From our academic aspect, employability means money again, and price pressure seems to be one of the highest pressure factors, and time pressure. So if you see this diagram, you realize that we really have to professionalize our degree holders in order to make them competitive on the market, because the market becomes harder and harder, and I think that's the experience universities and all the associations are making, I suppose so. Obviously, just to come to an end, we have to look forward to what we are doing. And this is the tentative outlook to the future, very tentative. We have to deal much more with the impact of artificial intelligence. We all tend a bit to ignore it or to consider it a threatening aspect or something we can't really deal with. We have to deal with. We have also to deal with the new definition of the profession. I'm talking about the translation profession. Yeah? So the classical word translator, definition translator for our profession will be out of date within 5 years, and that's even a long-term thing. I think it will even be out of date within 2 years in case, or even shorter time. Yeah? So if we really train people to become mere and genuine translators and to consider themselves being translators only, this will be the wrong way to do in teaching. We really have to adapt to a multifaceted profession. We'll have different job profiles, and we have really to deal with multidisciplinarity, which means we have to deal with neurological aspects, with intercultural aspects, with linguistic aspects, with technological aspects. Which brings me to the consequences for the MA training design. For a master training, I'm talking about a master training. For a master training, which means 1 or 2 years of training, we will not be able to, let's say, afford to teach them really basic language and transcultural skills. We need to build up master training on a very, very good base, a language and culture base, in not only the A language or the so-called mother tongue, but in all working languages, which means that language and transcultural skills should become a prerequisite. We can't do differently anymore within 2 years, knowing what we have to teach them. Yeah? We have to deal with an intake of technological modules from MINT disciplines. We always considered our discipline being something very, let's say, humanistic and language related, which is true, but it's only a partial aspect of our discipline. We have to deal with the intake of neurolinguistic modules from neuroscience, which means that program design has to have 3 parts: the linguistic part, the technological part, and the neurolinguistic part in future times, and that's not so far off. And we have really to try hard to get stronger links with the language industry, because the language industry is finally the customer, and we are training our people for the customers. And what is also important, talking about a multifaceted discipline, we have to create in program design a greater permeability between translation and interpreting modules. We know that the service, the language service provision, will not be focused anymore only on one or the other, on the free market. I'm not talking about the institutions, I'm talking about the free market. And there we have really to deal with this aspect of combining both. So that was a rush through the profession, let's say, or the future of the profession, hoping that we are seeing in the right way the future of the profession. We don't know if it becomes true, but a big part of it is just reality now. So we are even a bit behind developments. and we need really to adapt to this. So thank you, and if you're interested in some details or if you have some further questions, you may write to me and I will be glad to answer your question or to get into a conversation about what you're interested in.